Alright everyone, there's a fake controversy out of the UK's academic and film-related circles, I guess, about this new technology, the Neuralink stuff they're using to upscale and colorize old film. The idea is that old films, if you use proper AI, if you use a proper algorithm, you can actually sort of paste in missing frames, and so you can up it to 60 FPS, even if you start out with like 15 or 10 or something. And a machine can do this better than a human. Like, a human could probably do that. With inference, they could, generally speaking, they could replicate things. And this part of this is a cleaning up process. Old film, prior to the fairly modern era, certainly the post-VHS era in some cases, old film tends to be grainy. Often it's damaged. So you'll have, it won't be quite steady. It'll be shaking around a little bit, low resolution and so forth. The idea is that a machine is capable of extrapolating from that film, enhancing it. It is reasonably accurate at doing so. It's been pointed out in this fake controversy that history will be seen through a flawed lens when you do this, because the colors won't technically be the real colors. Could bias the person into thinking that an example is given about blue jeans or something like that, that it's going to extrapolate colors that aren't there. The frames will never be 100% accurate because, of course, the missing frame doesn't exist. The computer is making it up, basically averaging out between the two surrounding frames. What I would say is this, and here's why I wouldn't consider this controversial. Number one, I can't imagine how this is impacting anything substantial in terms of human thought. Just upscaling it, adding potentially new audio where audio is missing, which that would be a new addition. I don't understand why it would be considered substantial. That's number one. Number two, the idea that humans will be any better at interpreting that film in an accurate way is completely flies in the face of history. Maybe this is people who are engaged as film buffs ignoring people who maybe are more interested in history. History is written by the victors. History is always through a flawed lens. Most of what you know about history is at least partially interpreted after the fact by people with an inherent bias. Human beings are arguably going to be less likely to produce if humans were to fill in the missing frames, if humans were to restore it by hand, if humans were to interpret the original film as opposed to interpreting the colorized 4K upscaled 60 FPS film. Humans will make more errors than the machine will. The machine doesn't have an inherent political or social bias. There may be a mechanical bias in terms of it's trying to apply an algorithm based on machine learning to a situation that's outside of the norm, and so it'll be less accurate. And a human, of course, could check it and attempt to correct it, and it'll refine itself over time. It's called machine learning. A human will be more biased, whether they're looking at the original film or not, even if it's original stock film. Even if, for instance, let's say you have war footage, World War I, World War II, whatever. And it's just raw footage. It's not been edited, colorized, anything. It's just an original reel. It's taken from a personal perspective of the person that's recording, from one side or the other of the battle, number one. There might be missing frames. There might be damage to it. A human interpolating and extrapolating into that is going to be more biased than the machine will. The machine doesn't care what side of the military it was filmed by. It doesn't need the context. It is simply trying to recreate something based on a purely mechanical means. Now, the system was built by humans. There will therefore be that initial seed of bias. The idea of machine learning is over time it's capable of compensating for that. It's one of the basic purposes of it. It takes things out of the hands of biased, flawed human beings, puts them in the hand of a mechanical system, an electronic system that at least is less likely over time to be biased. I don't see any controversy here at all. I think it's just people that are afraid of new technology. And I think it is good to be cautionary and tell people, okay, well, if we've upscaled it from 30 to 60 FPS, filling in every other frame, and it was black and white and we've colorized it, the colors are not necessarily fully accurate. The original film didn't even have colors. So that's not accurate either. Obviously, what you were recording at the time wasn't actually black and white. You know, before color film, the world wasn't actually black and white. You do realize that. Sometimes I feel like some people actually believe that, by the way. I think I did as maybe a little kid, and I'm like, oh, no, when was color invented? Or something like that. I know it sounds funny, but, you know, from the mouths of children or babes or whatever the fucking quote is. But there was a color of what they were recording had color. So you've gone from it being inaccurate because it's depicting it as black and white, to it being inaccurate because it's depicting it as color, but generally speaking, it will more closely approximate the reality. If you're filling in skin tones and stuff like that, if you're extrapolating, if you know certain colors because you know what a certain flag's coloration is, and so you're colorizing it with this system, it'll be more or less accurate. Not 100%, but certainly better than black and white. And any interpretation of the extra frames will be better suited to a computer. The computer is capable of going through it without any form of bias and capable of correcting it very, very easily. It also speeds the process up, and I think that also bothers some of these film historians because they're like, well, how are we going to compete? How can I compete with 60 FPS 4K when I'm sitting there for 2 years just trying to get 10 minutes of film corrected in some way? But the machine did it in an afternoon. Well, there you see, these people are probably afraid of getting replaced by a robot. There are a lot of people that will be, by the way. I happen to believe that Andrew Yang's solutions are wrong, but his basic premise is at least in part correct. Well, these people, I guess, will be some of the first to go. Bye. That's about all. Peace out.